Hey, you beautiful listener. Welcome to another episode of One for Safety, the show where indie filmmakers give you their insights and opinions on all things entertainment. If you haven't heard last week's episode, I highly recommend you hit pause and go find that one, because this is part 2 and the thrilling conclusion to last week's topic. Like our previous two-parter, we'll be skipping the weekly obsession and what are you having segments in this second part. But never fear, they'll be back safely on our next episode. So, without further delay, let's hop right back in.
I know.
All right, well, let's move on. Number 3. Alex, go for it.
Let's see what I have for number 3. Hold on. I'm going to say Witcher 3. I'm going to say 3 Witcher 3.
Did you play games in the last, like 20 years?
What do you mean? Wasn't...
I guess Resident Evil 4
was from
that's
15
true.
years ago or something.
That's true. I take it back.
And Witcher was like 6 years ago now?
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, dude.
No.
Witcher 3 is old now, dude.
Oh, that's so long ago.
Philip is so old now.
He's drinking whiskey. He's crossed over.
Philip ages with every drink.
Here's the thing. Moses is saying all the old
This whiskey
games.
is older
I'm saying
than
all the
I
new
am.
games.
By the way, I'm done with old games. Well,
Here
I
we
guess older
I'm
games.
2015, 5 years ago. Witcher 3 is 5 years old.
Yeah. So why is this your number 3?
You just see the influence. It's like a perfection of an RPG kind of game. Like I don't know. Like I almost said Mass Effect. I almost said like Final Fantasy and other stuff. Like this is why it's hard to do 5 games, because there's obviously other games I'd want to say that are older or like have been around longer. But I just feel like The Witcher 3, we were talking about like which game was maybe the first game to do something and which game perfected the thing. And I think Witcher 3 perfected it. And I've yet to play another open world RPG that like perfected that kind of feeling. Like it's just that game is so massive and alive and everything feels so good. And there's like glitches and shit, but like it just feels so good to like walk around that game and play that game. And when you're done, you're just like, man, that was... And it was an adventure. Like you really feel like there hasn't, I don't know, since then or before then, I don't know if there's been a game that really like I think perfected the RPG as well as it did. And I think we'll see. I mean, I feel like I'm excited for like Cyberpunk next, because I feel like they're just gonna one up themselves. CD Projekt Red.
I think in a lot of ways, Witcher 3 was kind of the culmination of years of hard work from not just CD Projekt Red, but all the other RPG developers that came before them. It was like they took what so many other people have tried and learned and practiced and like worked towards perfecting, and then it's like they just synergized it into that one game.
Exactly. And I think that's the reason why I like it so much, is because it just perfected it. And I don't know if anything else has kind of stood up to it even yet. So we'll see. Beatrice, number 3.
Final Fantasy.
See?
Actually,
Which one?
10 and 7. I can't pick between the two. I think those two especially.
Original 7 or remake 7?
Let me just stick with Final Fantasy 10, because I can't actually pick between. Because that one's a little easier. If I go in between the remake and the original, I might get a little...
Yeah.
There's going to be things from each. But for 10, I remember, because that was actually my first entry into Final Fantasy. It wasn't actually 7. For me and my brothers, we played Final Fantasy 10 like together in a way. And it was one of those games where like, I didn't know games could look like this. Because this was the first time where I saw them design characters almost like real people, and it was it was so weirdly realistic, and we were so into the cinematic, and then it just felt like a movie, but at the same time we got to put ourselves into these characters' shoes, and like Titus, all of that. We just loved the world that I came to be. And yeah, for me mainly, it was like I was just so impressed by the cinematic as a kid. I was like blown away. But yeah, that was my number 3.
Yeah.
That's a franchise that I've completely missed the boat on. I didn't play it. I've never played a Final Fantasy.
Neither have I.
Yeah, I think that I got into it late too. Like I did X2. I think I did X2 was my first entry, and then I like only played a little bit of that, and then I played 15, which is the one that everyone like shits on.
Yeah.
But I like actually really enjoy it. And then 7 remake was the one. I missed all the old ones.
I feel like it's one of those series that there are so many entries and so much disagreement over which ones you play, which ones you don't play, which ones are trash, which ones are classics, that like I feel like I don't even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole at this point because I don't know where to start.
The MMO, the
I don't
14 is really good. I think
Yeah.
everyone agrees on that. The MMO.
14?
That's
But
the
even
MMO.
if you don't know where to
Oh, I don't do
start,
MMOs though.
That one's pretty fun. I usually
why not
don't.
start with 7, the remake? I
Yes.
feel like that one
The
would be a
remake of
good
7. Is
Do
it?
it.
Yeah.
It's good?
It's fucking solid.
That's like the quintessential Final
Yeah.
Fantasy.
well, no, that's the
one, right?
original. But then the remake they just made.
Wait,
is-
how can number 7 be the original?
No, seven.
Seven
remake.
came out, and then it was one of like
Oh,
the
okay.
favorites of Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
and
But,
then
but
they
I
I'm
mean,
saying
like
the quintessential.
of all the Final Fantasy, like 7's the one that you have to play.
That's the one that people. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there is that.
I didn't play
think
all of them. I watched a lot of the gameplays for like, before 7. Graphically, it just doesn't really
Sure.
hold up. So then
Right.
I think post that they start to catch up, and then they turn it into what everyone knows as the Final Fantasy look now, which is that weird like uncanny valley of human, and then so you buy
Yeah.
into it for that now. And then even the movies they made after that, Advent Children. What's the other one that starts with a G that they did not that long ago?
Yeah.
I think.
But it's just it's built off the Final Fantasy world, and that's, well, even the worlds exist separately, like 10 versus 7 versus 14 versus 13, all of them. It's just, if you were to start somewhere now,
They're
the
all
Final Fan-
independent, right? Like
They
for
are.
the most part, yeah.
yeah,
they
they
all.
are.
But yeah, seven's the most popular for sure. But I don't know if it's considered the best. It's just that it was one that sold the most. I think it just was the
Yeah.
most popular in general.
And the movie was very popular. I think the characters became the most iconic because of their storylines, and each Final Fantasy has its
Gotcha.
own character and storylines built off of it. But
Yeah.
7 was most
Yeah, I never
popular.
played 7, but like, if you can tell me who's like the most iconic character from 7, it's the guy with the sword.
Cloud.
Cloud,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
Cloud and
And
Tifa.
Sephiroth.
Tifa.
Yeah, Tifa, Sephiroth, the guy with the long silver
And
hair.
yeah,
and
what's
the
that
giant
girl's name?
sword.
Eris?
Aaron.
Aaron, yeah. The girl with the red hair, like the
girlfriend
red jacket.
That gets murdered. Spoiler alert for a 20-year-old game.
Oh, damn, I didn't play it.
A what?
What?
7. The 7 remake is one part of the
that's
entire
right.
game.
It hasn't actually.
You had
happened
to have
yet.
known that, though,
No, I
right?
didn't.
oh wow.
Oh, come on.
Wow, so
I haven't
Metal
even
Gear
played one of
Solid
these games.
5 ruined for me by Moses.
Oh my
And now
God.
Final Fantasy
And I did it on
ruined-
tape.
Wow.
At least
Yeah,
mine was
I
behind closed
do think
doors.
that it's just one of those films. Like if you're interested in story in film or story in games, then Final Fantasy was a lot of entry points for people who weren't into games, because they could buy into the world and into the story that was in each fantasy world.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
Philip, number 3. Philip is like 3 whiskeys deep now.
Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone on
Oh
PC.
my God.
Look,
I didn't even know they made the game.
yeah. Well, I think I chose this one because it came from that heyday of licensed video games. If anybody remembers, in the early 2000s, it was like every movie that came out had to have a video game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like even The Italian Job had a video game.
Oh, yeah.
But like, I don't know why, but I have this
The
really
Italian Job. That was like the movie that introduced the Mini Cooper, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And like they had a video game which didn't even use the right year of Mini Cooper in it. But like yeah, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone was like really big because it was the first game that I owned on
I
a
didn't
PC.
know there was a game.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
it's
it
pretty
was-
fun.
I think that like probably if you went back and played it now, I would be like, this is a trash game.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But like I loved that game. I thought that game was the bee's knees. I have this really weird, I don't know why, but like I have this salient memory of Christmas one year. I already had the game. I hadn't beaten it. No, I think I'd beaten it like 3 times before.
Oh my God.
But like it was Christmas Eve and my aunt and my grandma and like my cousins are there, but like they're all in the other room, and I had like snuck off to my dad's like office and sat at his computer so that I could finish the last level. Where you have to like switch potions around so that you can go battle Quarrel. Yeah, I like really remember this game.
Oh,
Yeah,
shit.
those are very specific details.
Yeah, that was a big introduction into video games for me.
Did you know they're making like an RPG? Harry
They're
Potter.
what?
It's
No,
like
they're not.
Harry
yeah.
Potter?
Wow, if you
Yeah.
guys saw Philip's eyes right now when you said that.
Are you seeing
No.
my eyes through my Harry Potter glasses?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely rumors of it, and they had released some like at least screenshots of it, and I think they're going to announce it soon. I think it's made by. This is probably not totally right, but I think it was Rocksteady was the one that might be behind it. Oh, interesting. But yeah, then they're going to make like a kind of RPG like.
I mean, I think
game.
that like the Harry Potter franchise is like ripe for video games,
Oh, yeah.
but they really haven't tapped the market as well as they could have, because the games that they made are really basic platformers and they're kind of boring.
Yeah.
But like,
They're just
there's-
money machines.
yeah,
man.
like they could be printing money if they put the right people behind it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this next one does it.
Yeah.
All right, I
Number
guess that's
three,
me.
Moses.
Number 3. So my number 3 is God of War, but the original.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yeah, only because I remember when it came. So I'm a big fan of Greek mythology, and when that came out, and you had to go and kill, the God of War Ares, it was so crazy. And then just the story, his revenge story, just really reached to me. I have this weird affinity for like revenge and like depression and all that stuff.
Yeah, don't say Moses.
I mean, we can talk about that later, or not. But the gameplay of it was really cool. I remember that was the first game that was like, you would get into like these cinematic excerpts where it was very interactive at the same time, where you had to hit like circle at the correct time.
Didn't that game invent the QuickTime event?
I think so.
I think it was like the first big game to have QuickTime events in it.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, that was a big part of it too. Because I remember I would like get frustrated at some parts, and there was some detective aspect to it, I want to say, or like puzzle solving part of it, which really got to me too, in a positive way. Yeah, God of War.
So a little tangent off of that about QuickTime events. I guess like a lot of video game companies now use QuickTime events as loading screens. So like, especially Naughty Dog is like really known for doing this. So whenever you go up to a door that has like a bookshelf or something in front of it, and then like your character goes up and you have to press like mash triangle to get out of the way, that's them hiding a loading screen behind a preloaded cinematic.
How interesting.
Which is just like another one of the
So
layers
smart.
of smoke and mirrors. But like, we can thank God of War for introducing that concept to us.
Yeah. Thanks, God of War.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, number 2.
Just a real quick correction. It's Aerith. I think we were saying Aaron earlier.
Oh, it's
Aerith.
Aerith.
Yeah.
Okay,
so I had to
okay.
look that shit up.
That's
I don't
okay,
want, I don't want
so
anyone.
correction.
The Final Fantasy
Do
Aerith
not
dies.
say it.
Yeah,
Come on.
it's too late. I already Googled, and the first thing that comes up is Final Fantasy VII Aerith death. I'm like, oh, thanks, Google, you fucks. I'm glad I didn't look that up before.
See, even Google thinks it's not a spoiler at this point.
I know. Even though it's like, well, I think the new game's going to change the way the story plays out, actually.
Yeah, apparently
Tifa
they
gets murdered.
diverged
Yeah.
a
What?
little bit.
Yeah,
They-
because I know my friend who played the original and played this one, the way, there's like a whole thing where,
yeah,
don't worry about
yeah,
it. There's a whole thing, it might be
just wait.
different.
Yeah,
Anyway.
might be
What's your
different.
number 2?
Number 2, the original Halo. Actually, I'm going to say Halo 2. Halo 2. I think the reason why I like Halo 2 more than Halo 1, even though Halo 1 was super influential, because it was kind of the first-person shooter thing you guys were saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was that first one that really, like, I was like, God damn, this is what first-person shooters can be, you know? I remember being at, I could really vividly remember being at certain people's houses and playing that game, kind of like probably GoldenEye style, but that was the one. I think I was like a little too old or too young for GoldenEye, but old enough for Halo, the original Halo. But Halo 2, I have this really vivid memory of being in middle school and it coming out and going on a field trip that day to Knott's Berry Farm and then coming home and
It's a
I had,
Knott's Berry Farm?
as a field trip. Yeah, I don't know.
Sick.
Weird, right? That's fucking yeah. Why? It's a weird field trip when I think about it. But anyway, and then anyway, like I came home and I had pre-ordered it, and I got home. It was at home waiting for me, and I was just like, "This is heaven for a fucking 7th grader." And like I got home and I fucking played Halo 2, and it was great. And I think beyond just like that memory, I think it was just a great fucking game, and it did something that was really interesting is where you played as an arbiter.
Yeah. Arbiter.
The alien guy.
Yeah.
right?
And that was interesting because it kind of did something like what like the Terminator did, right? Where they kind of made the bad guy the good guy, and you were like, oh shit! Like I can't think of I mean, maybe it probably had happened in other video games, but like
Are you saying that The Last of Us Part 2 is just a remake of Halo 2?
it probably is.
Oh my god.
I know. So
Aren't there zombies in that game too?
yeah, dude, the fucking
Oh
flood,
my
baby.
God, Naughty Dog.
The flood. I was terrified of the flood in the original Halo, actually, as a kid. But yeah, I just think that it was a really interesting game. It took what Halo did really well and just kind of perfected it even more, and was a great fucking game and did some other cool shit. Beatrice.
Number 2, Last of Us, the first one.
Tight.
Yeah, I think it was when I was gravitating less from like playing with others, but now I was really into these story-driven games, and you could like pick your own adventure kind of stuff. And then I was also really into these end of the world type films, TV shows, and all that all happening at once. And then I was playing Last of Us, and I was like, wow, I actually feel like these people could exist. And then these characters, unlike Final Fantasy games, where the character, if they're a villain, they're a villain. They might have like a little bit of good in them, but none of them are typically flawed or face what are real-time struggles and tough consequences to, I guess, your own like mortality or ethics and stuff like that. And playing Last of Us, it was just watching Joel, which was a character that was like deeply troubled, and he had his own kind of past that could be very much real. And it felt like a game that portrayed what could be real people in a post-apocalyptic world. So not that far from here, I guess. So it was just fun playing that kind of game, and then feeling like, again, I was in a film, but I get to be that character. And then there were so many moments that were like breathing moments that you could get in the game, like when they go into the part that's been like overgrown with grass and you see the giraffe, like things like that. Where I was like, wow, that's the kind of breather that you don't really get in these story-driven games that I haven't played in a long time. And I just felt really changed by it, and especially the ending, and then the decision that you have to make at the end, and finding out little by little. It's like a TV show or a film. Yeah.
So I'm gonna actually, for like my number 2, I'm gonna actually go ahead and just consume my 1 and 2 into like just one, which is Naughty Dog games, but specifically Uncharted. So my number 2 was actually Crash Bandicoot, because kind of similar reasons to Harry Potter and Modern Warfare.
The original Crash Bandicoot? Like,
yeah, the original.
Like PlayStation 1 Crash
Yeah,
Bandicoot?
the original PlayStation 1 Crash Bandicoot. But I mean, like the reasons why I chose that one were kind of similar to the other ones, which was like, I just remember playing it a lot as a kid, and it was like my introduction to platformers. But like, I think the through line from my number 2 to my number 1 spot is Naughty Dog, which they've really been the most influential developer of video games in my life, and specifically Uncharted. And I think that for a lot of the same reasons that you just brought up there, but Uncharted, I think I've talked about this in a previous episode, but it blew my mind as a kid, because I remember it was in 6th grade, this game came out, and it was a launch title for the PlayStation 3, and I went over to my friend's house. He was the first person that I knew that owned a PlayStation 3, and that was the only game he had for it. And I thought video games could never look better. And they certainly have. Video games have far surpassed the graphics in Uncharted 1, but nothing will ever match that moment of sitting on the carpet, launching Uncharted, and thinking that video games could not look more realistic than that. And I think that in a lot of ways, it is this like crux point in the modern video game that it perfected things like platformers and adventure games like Tomb Raider and other 3D platformers that had come before it, and then introduced all those mechanics into a cinematic game that no one had ever seen before. They were doing things like motion tracking the camera and motion tracking faces and having like real genuine portrayals of characters on screen, that those were like they were both perfecting and synergizing mechanics from other games that had been working for years they perfected it in that game, and then they were laying the groundwork for cinematic games like God of War, Last of Us Part 2. Like, so many games now use the things that Uncharted did. for like, then that really like introduced the market to it, and it kind of revolutionized how we think of cinematic video games and cinematic storytelling from a digital perspective. So like that is my number one.
So your number one is Uncharted. Number
Yeah.
two is Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Tight.
Cool. Then.
Well, then I guess that goes to me. My number 2 is Batman Arkham City.
Oh shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why Arkham City? Why not?
Well, I mean, I guess I would love to, group all of them together. But I think Arkham City, because it was like the first semi-open world game where it's like big enough where you're in the Batmobile and you're grappling around buildings and like traveling around doing, side missions and whatnot. But it was big enough, but yet contained, where I wasn't, losing track of the main storyline. And yeah, it just felt great. Like I love the detective aspect of it, where it's like I'm thinking of like, how do I get past this region, and this feeling of gratitude that comes with like solving like a riddle kind of thing. Like it just makes me think of how to how do I advance, and it just enhances my gameplay to me at least. And like obviously the Batman mythos and the stories involved of it was just like so good. And yeah, I to this day I like always replay it.
If I had to choose of the Arkham games to choose, I think I would choose Arkham Asylum.
The first one.
Yeah.
that
Which
was
like
good.
I think like for everything that Arkham City did well, like because I think that it kind of just perfected what Arkham Asylum had laid the groundwork for. But I think that the lack of an open world in Arkham Asylum is something that I really enjoy. I'm not a huge fan of open worlds to begin with, and so I remember playing the first one and I finished it, and I felt like that game encapsulates what it feels like to be Batman. Like when I sat down and played that game, I felt like I was Batman. And then in the second game, I felt like I was playing Batman. And it was really satisfying to play as Batman, to get to like kind of roll into that power fantasy of like flying around and like dive bombing on people and then beating the shit out of them and flying away. But like in a way, I didn't feel like that really was like the essence of Batman, where like the essence of Batman is really captured in the first game.
Right. And that's kind of going along with like the detective aspect of it. Is like everyone forgets like Batman is like this great detective, like the world's greatest detective, I think they even call him. And it's like it always gets like misplaced or not even thought about, because it's just Batman. He's an action hero kind of guy, but he's just always thinking ahead. And that's what I thought made the game so great.
So I guess like if you really enjoy that aspect of Batman, do you like tend to like did you read the comics at all?
I did not, but with that being said, I'm like really excited for the new movie, because
yeah.
it's supposed to be based on his detective skills as opposed to like his
I don't know, that trailer showed him beating the ever-loving shit.
Well, I mean,
I know.
I mean, he's got to have some, physicality to him. But from what I've heard and what I've read, it's supposed to be based on like his skills, because I think the main villain's the Riddler, right?
Yeah, I'd be
There's
really excited to
three
see that.
villains.
Right.
Yeah, it's Riddler,
Well, let's hope the
Riddler,
production
Penguin.
can go
Catwoman,
back.
and-
I don't even know who
Yeah.
who's the main villain in that.
I feel like it's the Riddler.
The Riddler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
I
it?
hate
The
it.
Penguins.
They
in
got
it.
Paul
They show,
Dano
they
for it,
show
though.
Colin
Farrell, yeah.
as him a lot in it too. So,
Yeah, but they have Paul Dano.
yeah, as a Riddler.
Did they even show Paul Dano in the trailer? I don't
no,
think
they
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 did.
they showed
yeah,
like
see, that's
his
how
silhouette.
you know. That's how you know.
Yeah.
If they're showing the bad guy his face in there, nah.
Maybe. So,
Alex, number 2.
one. Oh, number one.
Number
This is
one.
it. So this is like probably the easiest one, which is funny. Number one, but it's Metal Gear Solid. Just like easy for me, because it just had like the most influence of me getting into video games and seeing what video games could be beyond just being like this entertainment value. Because like you could say other games that were before it that like just were entertainment value type things that I played, like Crash Bandicoot, like playing games in an arcade or something as a kid, But I just feel like Metal Gear Solid was the first one, and I had like such an interesting time with that game because like I remember my cousin telling me about it. Like I have a vivid memory of him like explaining the game and me being like, "What the fuck is he talking about?" Is this like? And as a kid, I didn't say what the fuck he's talking about, but like as a kid, I was just like, what was my older cousin talking about? And I bought the game used. It didn't come with a manual, and that game is confusing as shit. So like, for like a however old I was, like maybe like 9 or 10, like which I shouldn't have been playing that game. And I don't know why my parents let me play it, because that's definitely not for kids. But I remember like playing it, not having the manual, and you kind of need the manual for that game.
You definitely need it.
And I remember playing it and still getting through it and like understanding it, and it just me being like as a kid being like, this is like unlike anything I've ever played, and it kind of influenced me in the way like.
Isn't it Outer Heaven based on?
Yeah. The Outer Heaven name is a Metal Gear Solid reference. So that shows just how much that game kind of kept influencing me and has like had an influence over just, I don't know, entertainment medium in general of how I digest things. And I just think.
I think so too, for the same reasons that I listed Uncharted as my number one. I think that Metal Gear Solid was almost like the prototype to that thing. Like Metal Gear Solid laid groundwork for cinematic video games that Uncharted would then go on and like take it to an entirely new level.
Exactly. Because I mean, like going back and looking at Metal Gear Solid, like, it does not hold up. Obviously, it's a PlayStation 1 game that has PlayStation 1 graphics, but at the time, it was so mind blowing to play that game, and like it was for a 10-year-old or whatever how old I was. It was. There's nothing quite like it. I mean,
but it's stretched multiple, generation. Well, maybe not generations, but multiple platforms and age groups into one like kind of cohesive story.
Yeah,
and I mean, it's lasted almost 4 generations of consoles before it died finally. Because it was like there was the MSX with 5. The original. There was the MSX with the original Metal Gear, and then
technically there was. NES, there was Metal Gear, which is I guess Snake's first initial mission, and then
so that was actually made after the MSX version. That was it was a computer game that was just released in Japan.
Oh, interesting.
And then they made Metal Gear. It lasted and it had a huge impact. And Hideo Kojima is obviously one of the greatest video game developers.
Yeah. If you haven't played Death Stranding, I'd say at least try it out.
I want to do it.
But it's not.
Did you finish it?
Yeah, I finished it. Eventually, it gets there, but it's just.
I've heard that like the end game is worth it.
The end game is worth it. The journey before that is not as worth it.
So I guess like I saw an interview with Hideo Kojima talking about that, and he actually designed the 4 side of the game to like force you through that. Like you were supposed to get forced through that so that by the time you get to the end game, you like learn to appreciate those things and you're like forced to work with each other. And it's an interesting use of game design to force people to work together towards like a better future.
Yeah, I definitely see that. And I think you cannot play that game not online, because if you play it online, it makes the game incredibly more just playable just in general, because people will put things in your way to like help you get through the game, because like that's a game that I would say does not need to be open world. If we're talking about open world versus not open world, that game I was like, why the fuck is this open world? Like this is just annoying as shit. I don't need this to be open world. I'm getting really like just getting through it. I get why, I guess, but it just still like it's so frustrating at a certain point. You're like, why the fuck am I delivering packages over and over again? This is dumb. Anyway.
UPS the video game.
Other stuff is really good about it, but yeah.
Beatrice, number 1.
Journey. My ranking is kind of not really like the most impact on me, but just kind of this transition, I think, of how games have evolved in my eyes. Because as much as I love film and TV, there's something about it being passive entertainment. For the most part, you can dive in and analyze and stuff, but then I think games offer a very active experience of storytelling. And not all games. There's like there are 2 schools of thought, like narratology versus like ludology, which is, do games need stories and stuff like that. But then I think Journey was one of those games that evolved into something that didn't need to be very clear cut in what the story was. And it just looked beautiful. It was very minimalistic. And there was something about not knowing what was happening, there being no dialogue really, but there you're being pushed forward and just like exploring this world. And then even when you finished it, sometimes you just didn't understand what it meant, which felt also kind of great. And then that's when you dive into like, what did everyone else think it meant? And it just opened a really great discussion for interpretation. So it's like another level of active participating in games that I didn't know existed before, because if it wasn't like Counter-Strike or Need for Speed, it was something like Final Fantasy or Last of Us, where the story was kind of clear and cut. Characters were very fleshed out, and you can, like, this is what they represent, this is who they are. But in Journey, it wasn't really like that. You just flew along.
Did you play with somebody?
No.
Oh, you didn't get to play with somebody?
No.
Did I ever tell you my Journey story?
No, do share. Alex has a really beautiful poster of Journey.
Yeah.
I remember seeing.
Yeah, I had this really, because if you play online, you can play with someone, right? But then you don't talk to them.
Oh, I didn't know
you
that.
go together on the journey.
And
it's like really, it's like this really cute thing where you like kind of journey with this person. And so I did this whole, I literally played the entire game with this person. Like they jumped in like right at the beginning with me, and I was like, oh, who's this person? I was like, oh, okay, I guess we'll like go on the journey together. And we did. We literally played the entire game together. and then at the end, I was like, oh, that was really beautiful. And then like I ended, and like maybe like 2 or 3 years later, I didn't even realize there was a message section of like your PlayStation, right? Like this is PlayStation 3, and I didn't really know that like, oh, there's a whole message sub menu. And I looked at the sub menu, and I had realized the person I played with had sent me a message and said, that was really awesome. Thanks for going on the journey with me.
Wow.
And I didn't even see it. I didn't get to respond. And that person, I feel so bad because I wish I had been like, oh yeah, that was really wonderful. And like, because it was just like,
there were
cool
a lot
experience.
of stories like that, like people just randomly jumping on with someone. And then there was something that for them made the gameplay even more enjoyable. For some people, it was harder because they couldn't speak, and it was like taking away this kind of communication that they could have. They could, of course, send messages, but there was something about being thrown onto this journey with an unknown stranger, like the stranger, and then you had to do it. What did that mean? And then people playing it alone is like, oh, I had a completely different take on it because I was on this journey alone. Yeah. And then what did it mean to share it with someone else? And it was great to watch people come up with their theories and just talk about it.
It's only a couple hours long,
It's
right?
really short.
It's like, I think you could get through it in an hour and a half.
I think I beat it in two-ish hours. Yeah, it was pretty quick.
It's interesting, like a length of a game that's the length of a movie, really.
Yeah.
Like if we're talking in the general length of a video game, we think, like on the scale of like 8 to 10 hours or like countless hours in a multiplayer game. But I don't think there's a lot of discussion about video games that only last a short amount of time. Even though, I don't know, I think there's something interesting about, like, that's an interesting experiment. Because I've never personally played Journey, but it's on the top of my list of games to try.
I would really highly recommend it.
And then there's no aggression to it. There's no, like, sadness. There's no happiness. I don't know. It's
there's
just,
a
like...
little bit. I mean, there's, like, some, like, scary moments where, like, there's, like, that weird
but it's all, like, kind
thing
of
that comes after you.
stripped down. And it feels unlike what we're told, like, what is... Resident Evil horror, what is like losing a person in a game, sadness. It's just very different. You're left to your own interpretation of like finding out what this world is about, and then you don't feel everything like you would in the extremes, like how most games design it to feel. You feel it in a very like, I think this is what it feels like, or it feels something like it, but it's just like a little flicker of whatever that emotion is supposed to be. And I thought that was really unique. I never really had that. And I left feeling just like a little floaty.
It's very visually beautiful, and like the music is incredible.
Oh yeah, music.
And I have like it on vinyl too. I bought that on vinyl.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so good.
We're gonna gather at Alex's house when you play it.
Have you played their other game?
Which one? Flower?
Abzu?
I haven't played Abzu, but I played Flower.
I've heard Abzu is really beautiful
that game
too.
Company, right? Yeah, game
Yeah,
company.
I think it's the same people.
Yeah, I played Flower is also very beautiful. It's very similar. You play as the wind. And you basically like pick up flower petals, and you're trying to, it's like a whole thing about.
Oh yeah,
like,
I saw that. Yeah.
It's really beautiful and interesting as well. I would recommend that one too.
Wow.
Moses.
Well, all right. I guess
number one.
Philip already did his number one. My number one is, well, I mean, as the other half of Outer Heaven Creations, I have to say, my number one is Metal Gear Solid. Alex kind of already hit the nail on the head, but it's like the pioneer of the cinematic and like storytelling game. I feel like, I mean, it's the first game that I think when I played was like, this is a movie. This is really like an interactive movie, and like in playing through it, there's just like revelation after revelation, and you never know how deep it goes, and like the character depth that gets presented, you know, it's unrivaled, I think. And like he said earlier about you can't play the game without the without the instruction booklet, or I guess even the case, right? Because I think you need the case.
Yeah, there's like a
some
call you have to make, and it's in the manual.
Yeah, I remember.
How did you get through this game without it?
I don't know.
So my little story is my first playthrough with Metal Gear Solid was my sister was dating a guy at the time, and for some reason he could like copy video games onto like modded CDs. And so
I know those.
So he ended up having that, and then it like worked on our PlayStation for some reason, because we just could not get my brother and I had never heard of Metal Gear Solid, but he was like, you should play this game, and so we started playing it, and it got to a point where like Snake needs to like call Meryl. But it's in the codec. You need to give her the codec, and like in the game, it's like, oh yeah, just check the instruction manual. Her codec's in there, and I'm just like, what the fuck? We have like a bootleg copy. I don't have an instruction booklet. And like, I remember telling my sister, like, can you call him right now? It's really important. And like he told us like Meryl's codec and stuff like that. But like it's crazy. And then like the Psycho Mantis part, where like he can read your memory card and stuff, and he can see all the games you played before. It was just mind blowing at the time, and to this day, like just every iteration of Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, Metal Gear Solid 4, I wasn't too excited about Metal Gear Solid 5, but just the whole dynamic and storytelling aspect of it, it really like affected me, obviously, so much that we started a company after Outer Heaven. So
actually, for anyone listening, what is Outer Heaven referencing in the game? What does it mean?
So Outer Heaven is a mercenary faction created by Big Boss, in which there are mercenaries without any allegiance to any nation in the world, and they can come together and perform jobs for hire. Outer Heaven Creations was a kind of derivative of that, where filmmakers of multiple backgrounds can come together to create some great content, and regardless of where you're from or your story. But if you did good work, you're always welcome here. And that's kind of how Outer Heaven Creations started.
Yeah. Sorry, I have another weird story about a video game. Did I ever tell you about like my Metal Gear Solid 4 story?
No.
So I didn't own a PlayStation 3 at the time, and the only way, and it came out, and I was like, I have to play Metal Gear Solid 4. This is like at the time I was like, this is the end. I had to find out what happens to Solid Snake, right? And I didn't know what to do. And this guy I played football with had a PlayStation 3. I was like, can I just borrow your PlayStation 3 just so I can play this? I swear to God, I'll beat it really quick. I'll give it right back. And he let me borrow his PlayStation 3 for like a week. And I was like, there was Jonathan Fitzgerald. So if he ever hears this, maybe he'll remember. I don't even really talk to him anymore. But like, yeah, it was crazy. Like I remember like begging. I was like, please, dude, let me just borrow it. I just want to play this game really quick. I don't even need it after that. And,
what a fan.
Yeah, dude, it's a homie. It wasn't even like we weren't even like that good of friends. Like it was just someone that we were friends and we like played football together, but that was it. That's
like, even more impressive, honestly.
Yeah, it was so cool, and just let me borrow it. I remember asking a bunch of people like, "Hey, yo, like, do you have a PlayStation 3 I could borrow?" Like, which is wild, to ask someone of, and he did it. Yeah.
And like, I feel like I have to reference that. Like, I ruined the ending of Metal Gear Solid 5 for you, Alex.
This is what I was saying earlier about the Final Fantasy thing.
Well, because I thought you had finished it, and
no,
oh my God,
I didn't realize that. Because I got there's like two endings.
I'm shocked that you finished it. I got so bored.
Well, like I said, I think out of all the Metal Gear games, I think that one's it's cool and it's great, but I feel like it didn't like, I think it changed direction from the other ones. Like it went very open world.
I think it's the perfect example of like a game that didn't need an open world.
Right. Yeah.
I'm surprised you got bored of it. I think it's like the most enjoyable playing of the games.
See,
but,
like,
but it's a worse story.
So I came into
Of
Metal
them,
Gear
in my
Solid kind of
opinion.
late in comparison. I actually started playing Metal Gear after 4 had come out, and one of my best friends from my fencing club was like, "You got to play this game. You got to play this game. You got to play this game." And then I got bronchitis, and I had to stay home for a week.
I got bronchitis.
So I right after I got I got the thing. They told me like you have bronchitis or whatever, and they told me I was gonna stay home. I went and bought a copy of it, and I sat down and I played the second one, Metal Gear Solid 2.
Right.
And it took me a little bit, but like not even, maybe like an hour or two in, I was like hooked. I was like, I understood why people liked these games so much. And part of what I enjoyed so much was the quirky, weird, frustrating gameplay of playing. And I think that Metal Gear Solid 5, like mechanically, is the greatest stealth game ever made. Like it's just from a mechanical standpoint of like the way your character moves, the way the environment reacts to what you do, and the weapons that you have at your disposal and everything make for a really, really fun stealth game. But to be honest, like Metal Gear Solid was more than a stealth game. Like that's like, you could, if you wanted just a stealth game, if you wanted a fun comparable stealth game, you could go play, Splinter Cell or like,
Which
even
was
The
like
Last
the
of
biggest
Us.
competitor to Metal Gear at the time.
Yeah. But like if you, and like that's the thing is like if you play Splinter Cell and then you go play a Metal Gear Solid from the same era, like Metal Gear Solid is a fundamentally different game. Where I think Metal Gear Solid 5 felt like the other ones, like the other games that were on the market, and it kind of like its story, which is really what I played them for, was these like, the stories are, I don't think they're that good from like a narrative standpoint, but they're really, really fun. Like there's just so many twists and turns, and like this person is that person who's actually a clone of this person who had their hand grafted on and has the spirit taken over, but really is just an imposter to make you think, and you're like, what the fuck is happening?
I mean, the deeper you go, it's kind of like, wait, what? You know what I mean?
But like that's the fun part is like when you're playing the game, you're not thinking about that. Instead, you're just like, you're not thinking about like everything that's happened after. It's like when he's like, but actually I am, like Liquid Snake, you're like, no shit, you got me.
Yeah, and I think at the core of it, it's very much this like sins of the father kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where they're just like, trying to do what they think is right.
Right.
And it's very conflicting ideologies at the end. But I thought it was great. And going back to like Metal Gear, is like that was the first game that ever made me feel my heartbeat in my throat, like the stealth aspect of it. And like the people are coming around the corner, I'm just like, oh fuck, holy shit. Like I could feel the adrenaline just coming
like
out.
I had played stealth games before, and like that adrenaline that you get when you're playing is like, I think that it's unparalleled in other games. There's nothing quite as scary as like crouching behind a little box and being like,
And hoping they don't see you.
Yeah.
But then like playing the Metal Gear games, when I started playing those, it brought it to like a whole other level. Like it really, really went for it,
Yeah. That's why it's our number ones,
Yeah. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to our episode?
Overall, I think there was a lot of crossing of different ideas of what we thought were great games and which influenced us in terms of either first-person shooters
What we're
and
each looking
multiplayers.
for in games, I think.
Yeah,
I think what's interesting too is seeing how the games that we've shared, which from like the different age ranges that we have, of like how the games that influence us are built on the games that influence people before us.
Yeah.
Like especially I think the best example would be Metal Gear to Uncharted.
Yeah.
Like those, like Metal Gear was huge for you guys and Uncharted was huge for me, and Uncharted wouldn't exist without Metal Gear. So I'm excited to see what people can come up with next.
Yeah, that's true. And if people have any thoughts on what their top fives are, they can let us know, because it's really hard actually.
Or join
There's
in on
so
the
many
Metal
other
Gear
games.
fandom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. 'Cause even games that you guys said, I was like, oh man, maybe that should have been on my list. Like it's just hard to pick five.
I mean, thinking back, like I'm surprised Metal Gear isn't on my list. But
It's okay.
I
Harry Potter
can
is really
appreciate
important.
it. Yeah, it was
It is very important to you.
deep
Yeah,
to
yeah.
my core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All about the stories that video games leave on you.
And
Yep.
this particular episode is about which which games meant a lot to us, like as far as top 5 goes. So yeah,
Yeah.
Harry Potter's good.
There you go.
All right. Well, tune in next time. And until then, this has been One for Safety, and we're out.